Hi everyone, I'm Claire Plaisted. Welcome to, I think is the last session of the day. Thank you for sticking around, but I'm sure you're going to find this really interesting. This session is about Inside the Manosphere, Finishing the Manosphere, a creative review. I'm joined by the team at 50/50 Post. To my left I have Gavin Allingham, who is the senior dubbing mixer, Beth Sayer, the senior online editor, and finally Joe Stab, the senior colorist. Hi guys.
Hello.
So before we go into all of this, we're going to watch a brief trailer so we can remind ourselves what this was about.
Who are you talking to?
What, do I not talk to them? Don't talk to him.
Really?
Talk to you. I normally train a little bit earlier in the day. I like to start.
It's coming.
I normally train a little bit earlier in the day. I like to start my day off working out,
Who are you
doing hard
talking
things.
to?
What, do I not talk to them? Don't talk to him.
Really?
Talk to you.
We're not on social media now. What would you say is the message?
I coach boys how to make money,
Wow, this is a nice spot.
how to be outside the system, how to be proper guys.
Shut up or nut up.
Would you see me that way? Did you look at my arms?
The stature's not saying too much.
I was entering the Manosphere, a wild frontier of streamers whose behavior is reshaping the culture.
People ask me why Miami, and I tell them because if it was 120 years ago, I'd be on a horse on the way to California to dig for gold.
Whose appeal has proved irresistible to hordes of young fans. 15 is probably like your main demographic.
No, it isn't.
They hear that content, they think it's acceptable.
Fuck the woman! Fuck the woman! What? What have I done?
I'm doing it for money. I don't care about...
The morality of it.
I'm not living for other people. I'm living for myself.
The mother of my children, she doesn't talk to women.
We don't cross into each other's lane.
Stings, huh? You seem upset by it. You seem upset by it.
Do you consider yourself a misogynist?
I love women and I actually understand them.
You think you know better than they do?
They want a guy that can lead them and dominate them.
Got anything to say to the live, Theroux?
Not really. Do you think Satanists are running the world?
Absolutely.
They talk about misinformation on the internet. This is what they're talking about.
I'm raw, I'm not a puppet, I'm not controlled. I don't do this bullshit editing that you guys do, because I'm real.
Are you getting triggered?
Great. Great, so let's start at the beginning. When you first received this material, this project, what stood out to you, both creatively and editorially? Starting with you.
I think for me it was just how shocking. You know, there was so much stuff in there that I wasn't personally aware of, really. And we were watching really early cuts, and it was obvious, I think, from pretty early on that they had the bones of an incredible film. You know, and it evolved and evolved and evolved and got better and better and better. It was just how shocking it was to me personally.
Yeah, as Gav said, it's, you know, when you first see it, it's hard to believe that these people exist and what they're talking about. They really believe what they're talking about, and yeah, they seem to live in a totally different world, and they have such a huge following. You know, they're so influential on young people especially, and I hadn't really heard of any of them before I'd seen any of this, so it's scary to think that that content is so accessible online, and if you've got young kids, or I've got a teenage nephew, he could be accessing this and I'd have absolutely no idea, and my sister, his mum, would have absolutely no idea, and he doesn't, by the way. But,
that you know of.
But yeah, it's scary and shocking, as Gav said.
Yeah. What about you? What were your first reactions to it?
Yeah, the same. I mean, it's really scary. Obviously, it's a very kind of generational thing, and there's a lot that's unknown. And what became really clear was the kind of like the contrast between the two worlds in the documentary. You've got like Louis operating in this very kind of grounded, kind of observational way, and then there's this like, the context is like really kind of polished and fake, really. So yeah, I mean, editorially in the cut, it was very, the way scenes moved between each other, that was very clear. But they were very different worlds.
Yeah. What were the key priorities in finishing a documentary with such sensitive and complex subjects?
Restraint, treating the material with honesty. A lot of the material was really strong. The conversations, Louis' interview style. So yeah, dealing with it with restraint really, and not kind of pulling the focus away, especially in the grade and in the grade, pulling the focus away from them awkward conversations. You want to keep it very kind of grounded and truthful. And on the other hand, it was kind of Louis' first documentary for Netflix. Right. And the first one to be delivered in Dolby Vision HDR. So it was kind of striking the balance between kind of elevating footage to kind of meet that standard, but still keeping it very grounded, and kind of in tone with kind of Mindhouse production, I'm more of a Louis Theroux production. You don't want to kind of take that kind of tone away from his kind of style, as it were. So it was a bit like that. So it was really about just making them two worlds distinct, but kind of still part of the same story.
Yeah. What about from an online edit point of view?
Same, really. It's just about keeping everything that we do subtle, right? To keep the focus on the contributors. It doesn't. It's like Joe said, it's his first Netflix thing, but you don't want to try and you want to keep it true to his style. You don't want to over-stylize it too much. I mean, everything that we do is you want to keep it as subtle as possible, really.
Yeah.
I think it's just like an authenticity that has to remain in a film like that, because as soon as you have people saying things like that that are so shocking, if the viewer gets a whiff that something's edited, it starts to become a little bit, you want it to be believable and authentic, and it is, and it's not actually a very heavily cut film. It is a very genuine film, but obviously there are edits, and my job is to make them as invisible as possible, so that it doesn't draw you out and go, hang on, did he really say that? So authenticity, I think.
Yeah. What were some of the key priorities in finishing the documentary?
Probably that.
Right.
Dealing with that dialogue particularly is this thing that needs to be authentic, and it needs to be consistent throughout the film. And with so many sources of podcast audio, which was like distorted and crunchy and clipped, but it is what it is. Films, audio from phones that have been streamed, it's like doubly as rubbish, Right. And then you've got the shot footage, which is great, and they've done a really nice job. Everywhere they'd filmed, the stuff that we were sent was really, really good. But there are occasions where we would have to embrace. A podcast is a podcast, and if some are mic'd up, some are not, but they're all on the podcast, just use the podcast, because the consistency of it is better than the jarring jumping around from different people who are mic'd. So I think that it keeps it feeling true to what it is.
Yeah. Any key priorities from an online edit?
Same, really. It's just keeping it all consistent, right? As Gav said, there's the lovely shot filmed footage in Miami, and then a dark podcast live stream of different frame rates, and just trying to keep them all connected and feeling like the same film.
Yeah, the same. Yeah.
Okay. So Joe, in a real world documentary footage, often unpredictable, with Louis in environments you can't control, how did you approach the grade to reflect the tone of the series?
Well, I wanted to be very kind of faithful to the real world. So very kind of, with natural skin tones, kind of controlled contrast, and again, nothing to kind of pull the attention away really from the viewer. And then, I mean, in practice, I mean, it was all about kind of, really kind of understanding the material and, how it was shot. It was shot on kind of Sony FX6s using prime lenses. And, they gave me a really good kind of like foundation for the grade. And obviously that kind of went to Beth first a lot of the time, for some clean-up work and, how the kind of mixed media formats kind of integrated and stuff. So it was really, so, the cameras it was FX6s and FX3s, but mainly their cameras, FX6s. So, that gave me a good kind of foundation. And like in Malaga and Miami, and it was very bright. There was a lot of kind of outdoor kind of locations. So we went for kind of like a warm and kind of rich palette, but still kind of keeping it believable. And then, when we go into the kind of contributors world, I kind of stylized it a bit more as well. So we wanted to kind of have that kind of them two worlds to be distinct. And they were also kind of shot on these kind of like mad Soviet lenses too, which basically like gave it all a kind of hyper real, kind of like postcard like quality. So that allowed me to kind of like push it a lot further in the grade, and make it like more kind of aspirational, but also artificial as well. Right. So that was a good contrast between the actuality, where I went quite kind of subtle with it, and kind of used like, I did want to kind of take it away from the kind of Sony S-Log3, S-Gamut kind of look, that profile that the camera kind of captures. So I kind of twisted it around to a slightly kind of different palette, and so there was a nice contrast between the two worlds. Yeah.
How do you strike the balance between making something visually compelling without over stylizing it?
I think it really comes down to, initially it comes down to understanding the material.
Right.
And, not just the kind of story, but the way it was shot. Obviously the narrative is very important, but also, the camera choices and lens choices and kind of any kind of filtration used, and really kind of, understanding kind of the reasons why the DP or the director chose to shoot on them kind of formats, or with whatever kind of kit really. And again, just understand the kind of creative intent of the whole process of the film. It's not just the kind of drama that that's been kind of well considered. And there's documentaries too, and even though they're kind of a lot of them are kind of run and gun, it's all about kind of the kind of initial kind of look board, if you like. So it's really it's really kind of understanding the material. Yeah.
So let's talk about sound. Sound carries so much value and is very important in visual documentary. How did you approach the sound design and mix for this?
I suppose similar to what Joe's saying, there's this distinct thing, and there's lots of formats that we're dealing with. But I think the shot footage, and it's mixed in Dolby Atmos, which I think you want it to feel immersive, and you want to be able to play with that. But at the same time, it's a run and gun, a documentary, so it needs to feel true and real, like I was saying earlier. It needs to feel authentic, and that offers up a lot of problems, in as much as you will have people will join interviews halfway through that aren't mic'd when they walk into a room, or they'll walk into a room and there's a kitchen radio playing, which is fine. But then when they start cutting that and the radio is on and it's off and it's on and it's off, these are just things that are inherent to the style of this style of film. And this film had plenty of that. So really it's problem solving each little scene as we go, and trying to make things feel location appropriate. Like Spain, Miami, New York are the three main, and they're all location appropriate. We use wild track, we used effects that are correct for their environments. You know, there's not like random bird tracks. They're proper for the environment and the countries. And then the VFX packages, which we only saw the final versions of quite late on, and they're sort of, I'm sure everyone's seen it, but they're really like glitchy picture effects, and director wanted them to feel like overwhelming, constant stream, jarring, and like this idea of just scrolling through social media. There's so much just information that none of it really makes any sense. So we used like digital interfaces, glitches, electrical cutouts and things, chopped it all up, and then spotted it to those grids the screen is sort of divided into a grid, and I think it's about 8 across and 6 up. Yeah. And we spotted sound effects to those things, those like objects to those things across the screen. So then as it happens, they jump around. Yeah. To it, which is really time consuming. Yeah. But it works if you watch it in Atmos. It's quite impressive. Yeah.
Were there moments where sound was doing more storytelling than the picture? Probably not.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what they're saying is the most shocking parts of the film. So you could probably take the visuals away, and it would still be
Which
shocking.
Is the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. It would still work. But I think in one of there's a Pred sting in there which is really like violent and quite it's not a very nice scene, but it became more and more censored visually as the process went on from a legal perspective. So the audio is having to do more and more and more to portray the level of violence that was used. And then we got hit with legal notes in audio that there was a certain word they were accusing him of that we couldn't say. And I think by the time we bleeped all of them, it was about 65% of the attack was a bleep. Right. So that wasn't an option. So we ended up stripping dialogue out, rebuilding sequences, taking things from different parts of the attack that weren't in the cut and rebuilding that up to keep it feeling lively. So I probably say that probably was heavily reliant on sound.
How do you handle dialogue clarity and consistency across the whole production? Because it's all different, isn't it?
Again, because of the sort of, like we said, podcast, streams, phones, shot footage, every instance is just dealt with like case by case. And like I mentioned earlier with the podcast, what I was getting at was when Louis is on, I think it's Mayan's podcast, they're all not mic'd by the production, but Louis was. So every time Louis spoke, he sounded nice and rich and it's great, and then everyone else was a bit podcasty. So you sort of make the choice to go consistently sort of slightly naff podcast audio is better than like this, like, oh, it's good, it's bad, it's good, it's bad. So you make that's one choice, to sort of let it be what it is, and then the next sequence will be about trying to improve it. I think when his girlfriend walks in to be interviewed, she's not mic'd, so but then we use loads of like tools to nick other people's mics to sort of build one for her so that she can contribute to the conversation in a shot footage kind of vibe. So it's sort of different depending on the scenes, really. Yeah.
Let's move on to the online. So walk us through the process, your online process for a project like this. How did you approach it?
So for HDR delivery, we would work, we'd use our ACES workflow. So we get all the rushes, we conform them into baseline, which is what Joe uses to grade, to colour manage them correctly. They would all, we'd spit out an EXR, we'd bring that into Flame, we'd have a pre-grade process, which is essentially, we'd bring all the archive in, and then it's essentially like a technical online pass that we would do before it goes to grade. So anything like frame rate conversions or aspect ratio fixes, any cleanup work, anything that would need to go to graphics, basically anything that we can fix before it goes to Joe so it looks lovely and in the best place it can be when they do the grade review. And then it also saves up time in our creative online session to do everything else. So we'd do that and then go back to Joe. He'd do a lovely, glossy, wonderful grade on it. Then it would come back to me, do our online pass, we'd bring in all the graphics, etc., etc. And then it would go, Joe would do an SDR trim, Gav would do his audio, and then send it off for QC and delivery.
What was the biggest technical challenge you had to solve?
Well, as we said, it's full of archive podcasts. There's
different,
all sorts of different frame rates floating around. Fixing all of that, particularly stuff that had to be embedded into graphics, making sure that nothing, like all of those clips didn't go wildly out of sync for Gav, although fixes it anyway. And then there's like the predator sting sections that Gav was talking about. The offline wanted to try and the production team wanted to try and come up with different ways of censoring people and their surroundings, so it wasn't, you don't end up with like just huge full screens of blurs or pixelations, and so tackling those sections in a subtle way was quite difficult. We ended up there was lots of those sections which were on the mixed frame rate archive where we had to essentially paint out any shop fronts, any street signs, anything like recognisable from the area, so people wouldn't recognise where they were essentially. That was really difficult because it was all just from live stream footage, so it's all on your phone. They're jumping around, they ended up getting like more and more censored as the process went on, as Gav was saying. And actually, a lot of it ended up just being shown via, like, Louis watching it through a phone.
Right.
Just to keep it as subtle as possible. There's also sections, like later on in the film, where Louis is out in the street and the guy is with Sneeko gets recognised, and you suddenly got like 10 teenage boys jumping around, like excited to see him. They're all like high-fiving, hugging, taking selfies, and they've all got to be blurred.
Right.
And again, you want to do that as subtle as possible. You don't want big blobs on the screen. You've got to make it like nice and fitting with the film. You don't want to take away from what's actually going on and what they're talking about. So I guess that's probably they were the most difficult sessions to complete.
I remember that kind of, was it rolling, no, it wasn't rolling shutter, it was a flicker in them slow-mo shots, or like Louis having a cigar. So I was looking at the rushes, obviously, because they were in base light, and this was before the grade. And, obviously they were all flagged, any kind of issues, technical issues are flagged, at the time of the conform. But just looking at some of the shots, and when, Beth did a kind of clean-up, I mean, there's no way, it was an integral part of the process, that kind of pre-grade online. Before the grade, because if Beth never was able to kind of, integrate all the kind of mixed media in a kind of technically clean way and clean it up, and do her work, I just wouldn't have been able to push it as much. So and when you deliver into any of the SVODs, it's really important to get it right. Otherwise, it's just going to be like loads of QC fails, and and you get more of that material as well.
Yeah. So, question for all of you: what was the most difficult sequence to edit across all of your specialties? Would you say?
I don't know. I think the sequence that I was talking about, we probably all had a bit of a fun time with that. I know, I know you did, right, Gav?
With Sneeko and the 10 kids, because they're all talking to him. And they're obviously just being picked up on a boom.
Yeah.
But obviously we had to voice disguise each of the 10 kids.
Yes.
But obviously not Louis and not Sneeko. So trying to like really tightly cut Sneeko's lav mics and Louis' mic and get them positioned in and make them sound like they're not super choppy and tight, whilst pitching the other guys on the booms, and that meant having to take a load of sync audio away and then replacing it with ambiances and cars and traffic, and which, because they were in New York, that was reasonably easy to do to make it feel noisy and rich. So that was a bit of a gift. If that had been somewhere quieter, it would have been a lot harder. But that was a bit tricky. For me.
I mean, I think the Malaga. For me, the Malaga was at night. When they were HS TikTok and we were roaming around Malaga at night, and it was a party scene, and it was all kind of outdoors, and there was just like the neon lights from like different clubs, and it was just mad. It was just like really kind of crazy. So it was really like pulling all the kind of like fluorescent kind of street lights, sodium street lights out of the picture, but still keeping them skin tones. So but again, there's kind of different tools to do different things, but yeah. But generally, it was shot really well, I must say. Yeah.
Good. How would you say the role of finishing has evolved with new technology and workflows? All of you. Start with you, Gavin.
I think there's so much more awareness from production companies of what of what is possible, and it's endless. It's just there's an endless list. I mean, like half of it is being sold here, and people are aware of it. So clients will come into my suite and say, "Oh, my friend told me you can just put this through X and it will be fine, or you can process this through that and it will be fine." And you go, maybe, but it still needs to be tried. Whereas, when I started, no one was coming into my suite asking me about plugins or talking to me about noise reduction. Whereas I think those things now. People are aware of it and they want it, and I suppose it's up to us to try and figure out where it's appropriate and where it isn't appropriate. But the list is growing for things like that, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, can we go? Sure. I mean, it's obviously evolving that AI and machine learning, in grading specifically, and I think it's a different one because it kind of gets you to. It gets you somewhere very, very quickly. With kind of even like look suggestions or auto balancing or whatever. But I guess kind of creatively, that some decisions still have to be kind of judged by human, and I think some things are very nuanced. So it's not there yet. Thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so the question was about evolving production.
How new technology and workflows is affecting.
Well, I mean workflows. I mean for grading as well. I mean there's a kind of crossover of roles as well with finishing artists doing kind of online and grade. And it's very efficient, and on the other hand, for larger productions, and whether that's short form or long form, they still require that kind of dedicated artist to do a grade, VFX, online, and delivery. And I think if you've got like if you've got a really robust kind of pipeline and kind of workflow, and you've got like really kind of good core creatives who work really closely together, you're going to get a really, really kind of amazing outcome, both creatively and technically. Yeah.
And finally, what is the one skill that you would recommend to anyone that wants to get into post-production and work at this level? What skills should they focus on to future-proof them, would you say?
Judgment. I think judgment is key. Probably always has been, but more so now. Just because you can doesn't mean you should necessarily. Judgment.
What about you?
I don't know. I mean that's a big one, isn't it? I mean you've got to. You've got to be able to. I mean we talk to each other like constantly, things back and forth, and communicating like really early on too within a production with the production team and post on
interpreting people and their visions and
understanding.
That is primarily what we're doing, is executing other people's visions. So.
I just gave Beth mine, so...
Okay, fair enough. Well, we're at time now anyway, so everyone can go to the pub. Thank you guys for joining me. That was really great.